Good afternoon and welcome to the State Examination Systems SES, or as we call it SES, New Hampshire Release tutorial. My name is Kyle Thomas and I'll be leading today's tutorial along with Alejandra Krasno and Lindsay Schmidt, also here on the Business Services team at CSBS. This is our, I think, third release tutorial for the State Examination System, and as you've gathered, we are naming our releases after state names. This one happens to be the New Hampshire release, and we're very excited to give you an overview of the features and functions that we've developed since the last release, which you're all using now, called the Kansas version. These are tutorials. They're not intended to be training. Obviously, there's lots of features, there's lots of changes, and to get a full sense of all this functionality works and get a chance to use it and a better understanding of it, we encourage you to take advantage of all the training content and material that our learning and development professionals have created for you. So again, this is not to replace any training. This is just to give you kind of a passing glimpse of the features and functions that we've brought and give you a little bit of the business backstory on how some of these features came to be. We've got a lot to go through today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to be doing kind of a three-way presentation today, me, Alejandra, and Lindsay, so we'll be handing things off. During the handoff periods are great times to ask questions, as well as any other time that something comes to mind. And we'll be jumping back and forth between the actual application itself, so SES and the training environment, and we've got a few slides to help facilitate the discussion. So to get us started, what's included in the New Hampshire release? Well, this is 2 iterations worth of work, and iterations may not mean anything to you, but those are our increments of development. And in those 2 iterations, we've accomplished 60 enhancements, over 60 enhancements, new features, a lot of which came from end user feedback. There are 16 company-facing functions that are new or improved, 43 for agencies. So agencies by far have the lion's share of the new features and functions, and then 8 of them benefit everybody. Those are just kind of general enhancements and releases and benefits. The full scope of what is included in this release can be found in our release notes, and the website is on the right there, www.csbs.org/about-SES. That's a great place to go to just kind of get started into the whole world of SES resources. If you can't find something, maybe start there, and hopefully you can navigate your way to finding the resources you need. The release notes, like I mentioned, are available right on that page. The things that we're going to talk about today and demo today are the new loan request and loan review functions, tracking company onboarding requests, outstanding onboarding requests, suspending the document retention clock. We made some changes to the scheduling module, and primarily the change was combining the previous 2 scheduling methods. We have added flexibility to the package assembly process. This came from some feedback that at the end of the exam, it was a little bit confusing to bundle up the examination package and ship it off, and sometimes steps were getting missed, so we made some flexibility and changes there. And then we've added the ability to update in bulk your information requests. That came from feedback that sometimes companies request extensions to those information requests that you send them, and that you needed the ability to grant that extension and apply a new due date to all your information requests. And then last but not least, we added a feature to export procedures, also from feedback from many examiners. This is just a small sample of the features that we are including in this release. And like I mentioned, I really encourage you to get familiar with the release notes. They're written in a way that anyone can digest and understand them. And they reference back different features and tickets. So it makes it easy. If you have a question about something, give us a call, let us know. We can reference those tickets and track down exactly where the feedback came from, how we addressed it, and hopefully answer your question pretty efficiently. So get used to reading those release notes. Okay, we're going to start out with the loan request and loan review workflow. One of the items that we heard about in pilot and since pilot is that for primarily mortgage and consumer finance exams, one of the big pieces of those exams is reviewing loans. And we didn't really have an efficient way in SES to facilitate that loan request and loan review process. Some folks figured it out because they used the information request process to kind of work around the lack of this functionality in the system. but we were missing this and had intended to release it as soon as we could. So that day is finally here, and this is what we've come up with. One caveat about this whole set of functionality in SES is that, one, it's optional. And that's important because it may not be appropriate for all industry types. Money service businesses, for example, you probably aren't reviewing loan files. Mortgages, yes, you're probably reviewing loan files. Consumer finance, you probably review loan files. So if that is part of your exam process, use this functionality. If it's not, don't. That's related to the second caveat that I think is very important to understand. This process may not be appropriate for all companies and all exams. We've gotten some feedback from early tests of this functionality that this might be most appropriate for smaller companies or exams where you're only requesting a handful of loan files. A handful, it's really your judgment call. I think as you see how this works, you'll get a better picture of when this may be appropriate for you to use or when it may not be. Larger companies, you may need to, we may need to do some more work on making this efficient. So the process in a nutshell, and I'm going to demo this, but I just want to give you an overview of the process so you can kind of watch these steps as they play out. As we created in SES, the whole end-to-end loan request and review workflow is as such. So the first, starting from left to right, the first white box, the regulator will request the full loan list. And these white boxes represent actions the regulator takes. The darker boxes, those the company takes. So, regulator, you request the loan list. What sometimes you call the loan download or the transaction register, whatever that full loan list is between your dates that you want, you request that from the company using your existing information request process in whatever format you currently require. It is our goal to, in the future, get to a standard format for that, but today we don't have a standard, so we're allowing you to request that from your company in whatever format you do today. Many of you do so in Excel, and you provide a template for them. That still works. Next step, company responds to that information request using today's existing functionality, and you then have your full transaction list, your full loan list in SES. Once you get that, now we're on to the third box, the white box there where you receive and analyze the loan list. You will then take a look at that loan list just like you do today. Nothing has changed really in your process up to this point. So if the company provides it to you in Excel, you'll use the Excel tool to analyze, slice and dice, maybe identify those loans of their entire loan portfolio that you plan to look at. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 50. But of the total loan portfolio, this is where you've got to use the tools available to you today to slice and dice that loan portfolio and figure out which ones you want to select and ultimately request full documentation from the company. Let's move on to the next step. Once you've sliced and diced that, you will then upload, using a file that we provide you, those selected loans into SES, and then you send them off to the company. And like I said, this is probably the part of the process that's entirely new and what you'll see in the demo today. Let's say a file of 10 is the number you've selected. You'll enter those 10 loans in a template that we provide. You'll upload those into SES. SES will validate that they're in the right format, and then it will transmit those requests to the company as individual requests. Now we're on to the next box, the dark one there, where the company responds to each request. And this is why my one caveat is important, because this may mean companies do not have, companies that have a large number of requests may not find this as efficient as their old way of doing it. But for smaller companies, we think they will. Each borrower file that you request from the company becomes an individual request in SES, just like the information request. So if you are asking for 10 loan files, the company has to individually provide you those 10 files back through our system. It's a judgment call, as I said, on whether it's efficient for them to do that on an individual basis or to give you the full batch of files through another mechanism. Using SES is a big advantage in this part because it keeps the files organized. You request the Thomas file, the company gives you the Thomas file in response to that request. You request the Schmidt file, they give you the Schmidt file for that request. They're not both lumped together in one disorganized zip folder. And then last but not least, the examiner receives those loan files from the company through the system, You can review them, document your findings in the system. And one important note here is, as you review and document your findings on a loan file, you'll use whatever templates and forms your state agency uses today. So if you have a workbook or an Excel spreadsheet that helps you go through the different steps of analyzing a loan file, you'll continue to use that same template and just upload it into SES as documentation if you wish. So I'm going to hop over to the system and do the loan request demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and make a loan request and show you how that process works. Give me a chance to hop over into our system. So to demonstrate the loan request process, I'm going to do so from the examiner's standpoint. And as I set this up, I have already scheduled an exam. I've already scoped the exam. And I've got this exam to the point where the company has already responded to the information request and given me my loan file. So exam number 952 is the exam I'm gonna follow in this flow. And you'll see on the information request tab, I've already completed the scope. I've already sent these information requests to the company, and I've gotten one back. This one that I got back was the request to provide a list of retail and wholesale loans closed in the period for my exam. So if I open that information request, I can see that the company provided a response yesterday, and it was an Excel document. So I download that loan request, and this would be part of my normal process, and I take a look at it. Now, I realize this may not look like a loan request today. Obviously, this is dummy data, and this probably isn't in your template that you use or your format that you use today, but bear with me. This would be, what you'd be looking at here would be the normal file you would receive from a company representing all of their loans. This company has only originated 80 loans in the exam period, which again is probably not very realistic, but it gives you a sense of what you're doing. So at this step, you would follow the process that you normally follow today of identifying loans in their portfolio that you want to hand select for review. So you would slice and dice, you'd use filters in Excel or whatever you do today to get to those loans that you ultimately want to send to the company and request documentation for. So we're going to use a little bit of the cooking show philosophy here and pretend like all that has happened. And let's just assume that I've sliced and diced that file and I've got it ready to go. I've selected 10 loans for review. So I'm going to hop over to the new tab in SES where all the new loan functionality is, and that's in this loan request area. So the first step in the process is to get our loan requests into the system. And to do that, you click on Upload Loan Request, and here we provide you a template. This template makes sure that you're uploading loan requests into the system in the format that SES is expecting. So I've already done this in true kind of cooking show form, and I've got my request for 10 loans prepared. And this is just an example of my request. And this is sparsely filled out to show that you don't need to fill out all of these fields. Only a few of them are required. So these 10 loans are the loans I selected from the previous list that I had up earlier, which was representing the full list of loans from the company. So I'm going to go back into SES, and I'm going to upload that file. And we built into SES a way to validate the different fields in the system, or the different fields in your loan upload. So I'm going to click Upload Loan Request, and the validations would display here. So if there were issues identified in your file, you would see them here. Now, this is not a great example of a dummy upload because probably one of the things you're going to need to provide to the institution or the company is the property address, the street address, and the city, state, and all that. But this is showing you that you don't have to. All that's really required is the loan or account number. And so from there, if you've got that data in the system, you're golden. This is enough for SES to generate requests to the company. So hopefully this makes sense. maybe it's easier just to read it across one line. The first loan here that in my request list is Cooper Anderson. Here's the loan number, there's the account number. If I felt like adding or making a change to this, you can click this edit button and enter in data as you wish, and then save it. Now, if that data had already been entered in my spreadsheet, it would have imported here, and I'd be good. So again, use that template to make sure your loan upload is digestible by SES, and then click on Add. The upload feature is just a quick way to get lots of loan files, or excuse me, loan requests uploaded into the system at one time. You can also add individual loan requests. So if you're only requesting a handful, maybe you don't want to mess with that template. Maybe you want to use this add loan request. For expediency's sake, I'm not going to demo that today. It's very intuitive. You just click add loan request. The system guides you through the fields you need to enter, and you're ready to go. So now that I've got 9 loan files in this, or excuse me, loan requests in the system and ready to head off to the company, I'm going to proceed and click Send Loan Request. This brings us to a very familiar screen, hopefully, which should look a lot like the information request send screen, where you can assign a bulk due date. I'm going to give them until August 7th to assemble these. Take a look one last time of all the loan files you're going to be requesting. Essentially what we're saying here to the company when I click Submit is, I need 9 borrower files from you for this exam. Everything from the Anderson file to the Clark file. Click here to validate those requests. This just allows SES to do one last double check. You can provide commentary to the company just like you can with the information request. You can upload any files and also signal if you want to get a notification when these things come back, and then hit send. Now, what's happening on the company side is they're getting a notification. You know, they're already in this exam because they've already been working with the information request and whatnot. They get a notification that there are loan requests outstanding. So the company staff sign into the system, and they begin on a one-by-one basis filling out, uploading files, and providing you the necessary documentation for loan file review. So that's not part of today's demo. That's really going to be the subject of hopefully a future SES workshop where we go over the full set of this functionality in maybe greater detail. But that's the process of transmitting a set of loan requests. You can see on the dashboard here, these are all now sent to the company. Once they come back, you'll see these response received numbers go up. And then once they're complete, meaning I've reviewed them, or a member of my exam team has reviewed them, you'll see this complete number increased. So that is the process of requesting loan files from the company. Now I'd like to show you the process of reviewing loan files that you receive from the company. So to do that, I've got to use a different exam because I had to set this all up and have these things at different stages. So to show you the process of reviewing a loan file, we're going to use exam number 951. And this is on the same company, but just it is a different exam and it's at a different stage. This exam is at the stage that we really left off at the last one, except the difference is the company in this exam has had a chance to respond to 3 of the loan files, or 3 of the loan requests, I should say. So I click on this loan request tab, and I can see this company has had a chance to transmit 3 of them back. One thing to call out here, because this is a design difference from previous versions of the platform, please always know that anytime you see kind of the outline or the look of 2 tabs, you can click these 2 tabs and just get a different view of what you were looking at before. So this is the loan summary, which has a very helpful dashboard. It gives you some metrics on your completion status, which we think are really cool. But if you just want to look at the details of the 9 files that you submitted to the company and where they're at, you can also look at this view. It's just a different way of looking at the same data. So I'm going to go back to the summary because I like that view. There are 3 loans in this status, meaning the company has sent 3 of these loans back. So these 3 are ready for an examiner to crack open these files and take a look at them. So I'm going to start by opening one of them up. And I'm glossing over some features here. You do have the ability to assign out loan files for review by examiners. You have the ability to do that just like you have on the procedures set of functionality. So all the kind of design and process around procedures applies the exact same way to the loan review process. I'm not going to include that in the demo just to save a little time because we've got a lot more we want to show you. So to get started reviewing this loan file, this just gives you a glance of the basic information and the fact that the company did respond to it. You click on Work the Loan Request, and this section is really designed to be flexible to meet whatever process you have in place today. I think as SES evolves, we'd like to include more standards here and find ways to make this more uniform, but today the loan review process really happens agency by agency, and you all have your own standards and your set of expectations and your work programs to guide loan review, and we don't want to take that away. And so we're allowing you to use those exact same tools and just document your findings here. So the layout here, once you click Work Loan File, is you've got a section where you can type your notes. Pretty common. You've got an area where you can flag if there was a finding associated with this loan request, or if there was a violation associated with this loan request. And then last but not least, probably the most important, is an area where you can upload your internal or your agency's file for reviewing loans. This being the New Hampshire release, I've got an Excel file here where we can go ahead and upload that. And this is my, excuse me, this is my completed template or my completed review of the Cooper loan file. Last but not least on this page, there's a record retention policy setting choice. This is the first time in the system where you have a choice as to which record retention policy should apply. We heard in our requirements gathering sessions that sometimes loan review documents need to be kept for a long period of time, and sometimes loan requests and loan review documents need to be kept for a short period of time. This gives you that option. And so you can choose to put these documents, mind you, record retention is applying to documents at this point. You can put these in either Category A, which is a 6-year retention period, or Category B, which is a 90-day retention period. I'm going to go ahead and click on 6 years. And then if you are complete, you can choose complete and confirm that decision. So we've now just completed one of the 3 loans that have been submitted. I went through that very quickly. I'm assuming you kind of track how the process of reviewing a loan works in your own state. You know that you have to open your own templates and you have to do lots of work checking out, you know, the different disclosures, the applications, the appraisal, and everything contained in that loan file. Obviously, I did not go through all that today because we don't have time to cover all that, but that's the essential process of receiving a file from the company, working it, reviewing any documentation that they have. You review the documentation, you can preview, or you can download. And in this way, you can see, I think, clearly the type of, hopefully this looks somewhat realistic. You've got a residential mortgage loan application, all the disclosures, and so on and so forth from the company's file submission. So I think that's really the majority of the loan request and loan review process. Remember, the request process starts with, just to kind of come back to our PowerPoint slide, starts with the process of using the information request like you do today, send that request list over, bring that file in, slice and dice it, choose the ones you want to review, send those over to the company. They send you the individual borrower files back. You review them, you document your findings, and you're done. So I think I'm going to pause there and take a look at our chat window to see what kind of questions have come in. We're getting some questions about, is there a way to default things at the system director level? I'm not sure what things those would be. I think it's probably referring to doc retention and whatnot. The answer is no. At this stage, there is no way to do that at a user role level. So just to kind of keep things moving, I'm going to hand it over now to Alejandra Krasno, and she's going to take us through a couple of the other ones. This will give me a chance to review some of the chat questions that came in on this topic, and then maybe at the end we'll round back and go from there. So give us a second to hand off this presentation, and I'll let Ali take it away.
Hi, thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen with everyone. I am going to talk about our new state agency onboarding feature and also document retention suspension. So prior to the New Hampshire release, agencies could only verify that a company had successfully onboarded in the system if after inviting that company to onboarding SES, the company took action and actually completed the steps to be onboarded in SES. If the company took no action, there was no way for the agency to know that an attempt was made to onboard the company. With the New Hampshire release, companies now are able to track prior and outstanding onboarding requests. So let me show you how this looks in the system. Okay, so I am in the training environment. I am logged in as an agency, and I pulled up this record of a company that I want to examine. As you can see, on this record, there is no supervisory activity contact, and so I am assuming that I need to onboard the company contact. So I'm going to go here to the Initiate Onboarding button, and when I click on that button, down here I can add the email address, all the information about the contact who I wish to onboard in SES. However, with the new enhancement, as you can see, there is now this box across the screen that provides you with prior onboarding and outstanding attempts. So as you can see, Justin Trek, who is a company representative, received an invitation to onboarding to SES. The request was sent by California staff director, which, you know, in a real-life scenario, you'd have a first name, last name for the agency representative, and when the request was sent to the company representative. So it's important to note that this box here with that tracks the prior onboarding attempts is tracking information across all state agencies. So even if, say, the Arizona Department of Financial Institutions try to onboard someone to SES for this company, you would be able to see those attempts as well. So that's the new enhancement regarding the company onboarding with the New Hampshire release. Are there any questions? Okay. So now we're going to move on to document retention. And I know document retention suspension, Kyle just spoke about this a little bit about our document retention policy. As you may recall, in our prior release, in the Kansas release, we implemented the provisions of the document retention policy. After certain retention timeframes, which we're not going to get into right now, but after the retention timeframes, documents that have been uploaded to SES are permanently deleted from the system. With the New Hampshire release, agencies now have the option of suspending the document retention clock on a supervisory activity. By suspending the document retention, agencies are able to retain the documents that were uploaded during the supervisory activity in the system as long as needed, even past the document retention timeframes. So for whatever reason this may be, whether it's for investigative purposes, legal, or other purposes. This feature is available to staff users, staff directors when they are closing and locking the supervisory activity. If the agency decides to suspend document retention on a supervisory activity, it's important to note that they have the ability to lift the suspension hold at any time. And while the document retention suspension is on, while that feature is enabled, they are going to receive monthly reminders about those supervisory activities with the suspension hold. It's also important to note that staff users and staff directors can access a report on their homepage that tracks the essays on which they have selected or elected to suspend document retention. And this report overall also keeps track of all the other supervisory activities that may be approaching a document retention timeframe in the next 30 days. So finally on this, we encourage state agencies using SES to draft and implement their own policies and procedures around document suspension to determine provisions such as who will be responsible of turning this feature on or off, and also who's going to be keeping track of the supervisory activities that have the suspension hold. And those are the two features that I wanted to go over with everyone. If there are no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle again.
Great. I had a chance while Ali was speaking there to address some of the questions in the chat bar. Just to kind of quickly go over one of the main questions on the loan review process, I got a couple questions about whether or not a company can submit individual documents in response to a loan request, or whether they can submit a folder containing all the documents for a particular borrower. And the answer is they can do either one, whichever their preference is. Back to our presentation. The next enhancement we've made, and this is an item for a future workshop, so we're going to cover this very lightly, is around the scheduling feature. In the scheduling feature, you provided feedback to us that your agency or most of your agencies look at some of the data points under the risk method and some of the data points under the cycle method. For those who haven't been in the scheduling area, we provided kind of two paths forward through the scheduling process, and one was called risk. We presented some risk metrics on your companies. One was called cycle. We presented more calendar-based, cycle-based metrics on those companies. And the feedback was overwhelming that you like a combination of the two, and our two paths did not allow for that. So we did away with the choice of method, and now we present the following fields on the scheduling selection screen. The last exam composite rating by any agency. So again, that's if the last agency who examined that company entered a composite rating, that will show as you're scheduling. That's an indication of risk. The number of complaints, also an indication of risk, and those would be complaints in the SES system. Complaints is under a pilot right now, so there are actually several dozen complaints in the system, so hopefully you'll start seeing those numbers grow and continue as we push that out nationwide in the not too distant future. The next field is the last exam date by any agency. Pretty self-explanatory. The next field is the next exam due by date for your agency. So that was a primary data field that many folks liked in the cycle-based method. So we're displaying that, of course. And then an indicator whether there are open MRAs and an indicator whether there are already existing scheduling items for your agency on that company, just so you don't accidentally schedule 2 exams or 2 investigations for that company. That's about as far as we're going to go on this. It's pretty self-explanatory when you get in there. I encourage you to start using that scheduling method or scheduling module that's available to staff director and staff user level roles. And for an in-depth workshop on that whole set of functionality, join us on August 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be doing a similar webinar-style deep dive into just that set of features. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Schmidt, who will take us through the next set of features.
Thanks, Kyle.
Lindsay,
Just check to make sure you can hear me.
You sound great.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen here. Get to the right slide. Okay, so I have some small but I think impactful enhancements to go over with you today. Let me put my presentation into the presentation mode here. Okay. So the first thing that we enhanced was changes to the report of exam and the assembly of the report before you're able to send it to the company. So currently, you upload versions of the report of exam. In some agencies, it goes through a review process. And if in that process, whether as the EIC or as the reviewer of that report, if you accidentally mark the report complete too soon, there's unfortunately not a way in the system currently to kind of back out of that. So there were reports in the system that had track changes, and we needed to find a way to be able to allow the EIC, any reviewers, as well as the package assembler to kind of remedy that situation. So we've done 2 things. As you see in the solutions area here, the EIC, the primary reviewer, as well as the package assembler must confirm that the final version of the report that they're uploading is intended to be sent to the company. So as you'll see on the right-hand side here, we implemented a message that you actually have to click into to confirm that you are, by completing the report, this is the version of the report that you want to be shared with the company. Now, if for some reason the EIC, all of your reviewers of the report have made this confirmation and they're still the wrong version of the report, the package assembler, as they're getting together the items that they want to be sent to the company, also has that final ability to upload another version of the report. So we hope that helps. This is a pain point for a few agencies, so hopefully that will help allow you to be able to send the correct report of exam to the company. The next item quickly is the ability to update due date for information requests in bulk. And so the EIC on exams has the ability to go in and update dates in bulk. It was important for us to be able to keep the original due date, so that will be referenced. So if you go in and update a due date, the system will display both the original date and the date that you're updating it to, as well as the company will get notified of the updated due date. So in the system currently, before this release, you have to go into each information request one by one and update those dates. And if you have an information request that's over 100 items long, it's a little cumbersome to have to go in and do that one by one if you get a request from a company for an extension. And so this is going to allow you to do it just in one swoop, so to speak. So I'm going to hop out of the PowerPoint and jump into the system. Let me just refresh my screen here. And just quickly here, I am in an exam that I've prepared. I'm in the information request area. And you'll notice here in the upper right-hand corner, you have the ability to update due dates. Here, this gives you the ability to designate what the new date is. And so if you click on it, you can extend. I'll extend this to this upcoming Monday. If you want to update in bulk all of the information requests, you can use this select all option. If you just wanted to update a handful, then you can select the rows that you want to update and then click update due date. And so that one's pretty simple. And so that again, updates the due date and communicates to the company participants that the extension that they've requested of you has been granted, and they'd be able to see that in the system. The next thing and the last thing that I'm going to talk about is related to an export that we're building the ability to do on the procedures grid. So I'm going to hop over into the examination tab, click on procedures. And so this is available to the EICs on these supervisory activities. There's the ability to, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, so bear with me while I do that, you'll see that there's a small little area here where you can export the procedures grid into Excel. And so this was a request that we received just from agencies that have someone in more of a managerial role that want to take a look at the observations that their examiners have logged on these procedures and a few other metrics in Excel as opposed to this grid. I mean, they can certainly use this grid, but they wanted the ability to be able to kind of slice and dice this data. And so we were giving them the ability to go ahead and export that. And this export option is available even on closed exams. So really, at any point, if you scroll down to the bottom of this procedures area, the EIC will have the ability to go ahead and export it. When you export this grid, it will email you. I'll bring up an example of that email. This is an example. It is an attachment. The email comes, it's usually within a few minutes. I mean, it depends on how much the system is exporting, but it's not like it will come within a few minutes, it should. And then once you double click on the attachment, I'm going to bring up an example here. This is an example of the export and the data that's included in that export. So you have the procedure ID, you have the library ID, you have the actual procedure text. So this is what the examiner is actually conducting. You have the area for review that it matches. You have whether the procedure is core or non-core. If this exam was a multi-state exam with multiple agencies, you would have the ability, you would see the agency that the procedure belongs to. You also have the ability to see who the procedure could be assigned to. And then you have, probably most importantly, the observations area here. So if the examiner, as they're conducting the procedure, has typed in observations, they have the ability here to see all of that. There's also some information, some audit information about who added the procedure, when the procedure was last modified. There's a helpful area here where you can see if there was an attachment uploaded by the examiner as part of completing that procedure. And then lastly, there's an area here where it indicates if the procedure is done or not. And so all of these, you can, again, all the filters apply. You can filter these however you need to. And so I think that's all I wanted to cover. Were there any questions on any of the three items that I presented on? And I can turn it back over to Kyle.
All right. So we always try to do this at the end. Honorable mentions, some cool features that made it into this release that we didn't get a chance to talk about. As you're probably experiencing, we went really fast today. That's deliberate. This is, like I said earlier, this isn't supposed to be training. So just some quick hits on some nice new features. You can now add multiple documents for information requests and procedures in your library. That was covered on last week's library tutorial. The consumer complaint system got several enhancements. I mentioned that is in pilot. Hopefully we'll be seeing that on a nationwide basis very soon. And as I mentioned, the several dozen complaints that are in there will now show up on the supervisory side. Library updates, several to the library. There's a new scope type selection for information requests and procedures. This means your state agency can now tag your information requests and procedures by specific scope types. So if you have some IRs and procedures that only go with a limited scope, you can do that. If you've got some that go with a desk review, you can tag those as desk review. If they go to both limited and desk review, you can tag both. This is a really big feature, and I hope meets the requirements from a number of state agencies who said we really want to predefine our scopes and the information request lists and procedures that get conducted on the different scope types for our agency. Also in the library, we've made updates to over 85 information requests from NACARA. Excuse me, we've added 85 information requests from NACARA in the debt business type. Those were added as non-core. We can always switch those to core if that is the desire, but for now they're added as non-core. And we also have new guides available very soon to help each of you select which areas for review to know, to make sure all of the core information requests are added to the exam. We've got those guides made for mortgage origination, mortgage servicing, debt, and money service business, and I believe consumer finance. So those guides, again, are to help your examiners know which AFRs to put on their exam so that all the core information requests populate as expected. Those are, like I said, a quick hit list of some good items that ended up in this release. And again, check the release notes for more. Allie, I'll maybe just keep the presentation going, but do you want to go ahead and talk about the final slide here before I provide some closing comments?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound good.
Okay, great. We wanted to make sure that you knew that there is training content that's actively being developed right now with regards to the New Hampshire release. It's going to be finalized very soon. Our training team is working on that. And the new material around the New Hampshire release, the new training material is going to be shared with everyone on a post-New Hampshire release communication, and that should be going out in the next few days. And this slide just is there to remind everyone that on Thursdays, the training team hosts a call dedicated to current users that have questions about the system, and it can be on any new current functionality. So please know that those sessions are taking place on Thursdays, and it's a great way to answer some of those very in-the-weeds questions that you may have about the system. That's all. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Ellie. Before we open it up to questions, I just want to mention that this release, the New Hampshire release, will go live on Monday, August 3rd. SES will be down over the weekend. And thank you very much for your time today. I hope this is feeling like your system, that we're listening to your feedback and turning those feedback items around quickly into enhancements that you're seeing in the system. Why don't we go ahead and open it up for questions that we have about 10 minutes left. We'll monitor the chat bot, and also *7 will unmute your lines. Please feel free to speak up. We'll happily show anything over again that you would like. We got a question about the speed with which we went through these tutorials, that it was good, but like drinking from a water hose and will evaporate without practice. We sympathize with you. We do have to go fast through these because we're spending so much of our time online anymore. It's hard to keep people attention span for more than an hour. That's why we record them. And an email will go out as soon as we kind of process this recording, giving you access to this recording and all the content in it. Also, the training material for the system is really where you need to go to learn about how to use some of these new functions. Training can be found in SES itself. On almost every page, there's a Need Help link. You click that, it brings you to an article that will further link you or explain different features and functions relevant to that particular section of the system. These are also housed in our portal, our knowledge base. And so once you have access to SES, you have access to the knowledge base. And then, as Ali mentioned, there are weekly training Q&A sessions on Thursdays from 2:30 to 3:30 that you can join once you kind of get into the system and going if you have specific questions that you need addressed. So let us know if there's more of a need than that, but so far we're finding that's been a pretty good coverage for instructional materials. We still have a few more minutes for questions. Feel free to chime in with anything through the chat feature or, again, *7 to unmute your line.
Hey, Kyle, this is Lindsay. There's a question about, is the record retention date based on the date you click on it or 90 days after the examination is completed?
That's a great question. It is on the exam closure date or the date the last MRA is closed. So MRA, for those who aren't familiar, is a term in SES related to matters requiring attention. So if you put a MRA out after you close your exam record, those are follow-up items for the company, and that MRA has a 60-day period where it's outstanding and comes back. That record retention clock starts ticking at the point, the latter of the exam record being closed or the final MRA being closed. And
Kyle, this is Ale. Just want to add to that if you would like to review our documents retention policy, you can go to the Systems Policy tab in SES, and you'll find a link on there, and that's going to take you to the knowledge base that Kyle was referencing, and you can find our document retention policy on there, and as well as our other policies.
The next question is there an export function of IRs for companies?
There is currently not, but gee, I didn't think we had any companies on the call today. We've gotten that request a number of times from companies, and we are taking a look at the development list and our system's capacity to handle that, and hoping to be able to deliver that in an upcoming release. That has come up enough times now where it seems to be a recurring need. We just wanted to be very careful before putting that on because those exports are resource intensive on the system, apparently, and the IR list being quite large, we were concerned that there could be some bottlenecking going on. But again, we have that on our list of features to prioritize for a future release. I hope to have that out to you soon. There's another question here about the auto credit industry standards were provided to CSBS during the pilot. Is there a project underway to add them as standards similar to the NACARA standard, and does CSBS have the payday standard items as well? I believe the auto are in, so I'll confirm that after this call, but if the submitter doesn't mind just maybe shooting me an email, I'll happily go back and forth with you on that, but I believe the auto industry standards are in, because you're right, they were provided to us. And then I don't believe we have the payday standard items. But again, if you're the author of that question, shoot me an email, ktomas@csbs.org. That is a great plug for requests for standards. We are trying through SES to standardize information requests and procedures wherever we can. And we're finding great sources of them through places like NACARA and the MTRA and then MMC. So where those exist, provide them to us, and we'll maintain them in SES for you, and they'll be available to all your examiners instantly. And whatever maintenance process you go through today to keep them up to date and fresh, you can continue using that. Just give us the updates, and like I said, we'll turn around those updates very quickly. Those are things actually that don't require a release for us, so we can make changes to those information requests and procedures on the fly as we need to.
Kyle, there was also a question about whether we have a directory of term abbreviations. And the answer to that question is yes, we do have that, and you can find that in our in the customer portal in the knowledge base. And if you do a word search under SES glossary, it should come up, and that'll provide you all of the terminology that we use in SES, along with the any acronyms and the definitions.
Thanks, Ali. I think for a future tutorial or one of our workshops, we will give you a tour of how to get to that portal and how to navigate and search around in that portal. Because I realize we're using this term. It may not be well known to everyone. You can access that portal from the csbs.org/about-SES website that we had on the very first slide. I'll go back to that and show you where that would be. The same website that has our release notes has other links to different areas where you can find more information. One of those links is the portal. So on that site, that'll take you out there. You may want to bookmark it, but until then, that's probably your best starting point or table of contents for SES type resources. But for a future one of these calls, I think it would be a great thing to do to kind of give folks a tutorial of that. And Allie just put the customer portal link in the chat window, so you're free to grab it from there and go ahead and bookmark that. But anyone who has access to SES has access to the portal automatically. Well, I am showing the top of the hour now, so we're going to go ahead and sign off. Again, I want to thank you for your participation today. At the end of this, a survey is going to come out. Please respond to that survey. Let us know if these are working for you or if they're not working for you, because we will adjust and we will make them work for you, like we're hopefully making this system work for you. At the end of the day, this is your system. We want you to own, control, and steer it, and the same with these release calls. So let us know how we can do better. And again, thank you for your participation and all the questions. We look forward to the next one. Take care. Be well. Thanks again.